Hey guys, how y'all keeping up? I hope you're doing good. Let's talk about Little Walter. Little Walter was a major figure in blues music. He was the most influential harmonica player in post war blues. He was a blues musician, singer, and songwriter, and he was a huge influence for future musicians. He was compared to people like Jimi Hendrix, Charlie Parker, Django Reinhardt. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the first and only artist to be inducted specifically as a harmonica player. He became the only person who ever got inducted into both the Blues and Rock and Roll Halls of Fame. In the movie Cadillac Records, Columbus Short played Little Walter. He did an amazing job playing that part. He did real good with that. He deserved 100 awards for how good he played in that movie. He went deep into the role. It was like he was in it seemed like he was the real Little Walter when I was watching it. It just seems he did real well in that little movie. Little Walter was no joke. He was no joke. Little Walter was so gifted with that harmonica, he brought that thing to life. There's a reason why he's called the greatest harmonica player of all time by many. He influenced groups like Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Elvis Presley. His talent was just out of this world. Little Walter had 14 top 10 hits on the Billboard R&B charts between 1952 and 1958, including two number one hits. The second was My Babe in 1955. A lot of you probably heard that song. Even if you didn't know who Little Walter was, you've probably heard that song, My Babe. My babe can't stand no cheating, my babe. Oh yeah, she can't stand no cheating, my babe. Oh yeah, she can't stand no cheating, can't stand that midnight creeping, my babe. Don't judge me. I used to hear that song playing on the radio when I was a little kid. I didn't know who Little Walter was then, but I sure knew the song. It's one of those old songs that would regularly play. Little Walter was born Marion Walter Jacobs. It is said that his birthday was May 1st, 1930. He was born without a birth certificate, and when he applied for a Social Security card in 1940, his birthday was listed as May 1st, 1923. Over the years, he allegedly often gave different years, but May 1st was constant. In some of the documents he filled out before reaching the legal age, he indicated birth years of 1925 and 1928, probably to appear to be of legal age to sign contracts for recordings and club work. After he reached the legal age based on the birth year of 1930, he consistently gave his birth year as 1930. In the 1940 U.S. Census, his mother Beatrice allegedly reported his age at 14. If so, it would make his birth year 1925. His parents allegedly separated before he was born, and it wasn't really accepted to have a baby out of wedlock. You know how it was back in those times. It was said that his mother allegedly abandoned him, but it wasn't because she didn't want him. It was because of what her parents believed in, and she was young. It is said that she looked for little Walter. She tried to find him. His father allegedly told her that he did not know where little Walter was. He was hiding Walter from her. His father took him to his family. He brought Walter to his uncle's house on a farm in Alexandria Rapids Parish, Louisiana. That is where he was raised, which is where he learned to play the harmonica at around 8 years old. Little Walter was insistent on mastering the harmonica. He was very determined. He wanted to play the saxophone, but he couldn't afford it at that time. The harmonica was the least expensive. It was said that his father played multiple instruments, so the talent was in Walter's family. Walter had some rough times. His father went to prison for shooting his sister's boyfriend. While he was in prison, Walter stayed with his uncle. His uncle later He went to prison as well. It is said that a Caucasian man allegedly shot his dog and his uncle shot and killed the man. His father got out of prison and had taken little Walter back to his mother. Later on, his grandfather sent him to Louisiana to live with some other family members. Around the time of World War II, a lot of African Americans, they were leaving the South. Walter left school, and by the age of 12, he had left rural Louisiana. The family he was staying with allegedly was not treating him too well. He decided to go to Chicago where he would have a better opportunity. On his way there, he traveled working odd jobs and playing music in the streets of New Orleans, Memphis, Helena, and West Helena, Arkansas, and St. Louis. When he was in Helena, he heard a great harmonica player, John Lee Sonny Boy Williamson, which inspired him. He also met Rice Miller in Arkansas. It is said that Rice Miller was calling himself Sonny Boy Williamson to profit off of that name, allegedly. Him and Walter became close and was like a mentor for Walter. Little Walter arrived in Chicago in 1946. Sometimes he would find work as a guitarist, but he would get more attention for his highly developed harmonica playing. According to Floyd Jones, a Chicago bluesman, Little Walter's first recording was an unreleased demo recorded soon after he arrived in Chicago, on which Little Walter played guitar, backing Jones. While in Chicago, Walter met Tampa Red and Big Bill Bronzy, and he started playing in the clubs with them. He recorded a demo on a small label and went by the name Little Walter J. The song was called I Just Keep Loving Her. He was around 16 years old at this time. He met blues legend Muddy Waters when he was around 17 years old. Muddy's artist Jimmy Rogers took Walter to meet Muddy. Jimmy knew how talented Walter was from back in Arkansas. After Muddy heard after he heard Walter, he put him in his band called the Headhunters. Walter joined Muddy's band in 1948, and by 1950, he was playing acoustic harmonica on Muddy Waters' recordings for Chess Records. The first appearance on record of Little Walter's amplified harmonica was on Muddy Waters' Country Boy. It was recorded on July 11th, 1951. Muddy's band consisted of Little Walter on the harmonica, Jimmy Rogers was the guitarist, Babyface Leroy was the drummer, and Big Crawford was bass. They were a great band. Allegedly, there was a lot of violence there. They experienced jealousy from other musicians who was trying to make it, and they experienced a lot of racism. It is alleged that Muddy carried 2 guns, and Little Walter carried one too. It was said that Little Walter would hide his in the amplifier in case something went down. It's been said that Little Walter was a wild boy. Well, you can tell it in the Cadillac Records movie that he was no joke. It is said that back in the early days when he was with Muddy Waters, Little Walter never drank alcohol. He would drink Pepsi Cola and stuff like that. Walter noticed that when he was playing with the band, you couldn't really hear him that well. The other instruments that the band was playing would drown him out. So he put the microphone in his hand while he played the harmonica through the guitar amp. Then people started to take notice and really hear him. He learned to control his breathing and so on, and then he was unstoppable. People loved it. His style was unique. It is said that nobody else was doing that. Walter was just full of talent. After a few years with Muddy, Walter created his own solo song, playing his harmonica during one of his recording sessions. The song was called Your Cat Will Play. Leonard Chess did not know how he was going to market the song because it was a harmonica instrumental that had never been done before. So he did not release the song immediately. One day, he was playing the song in the studio with the windows and doors open. He saw that women were dancing in the streets to the song. When he saw that, Leonard knew that Little Walter's song was a hit. Leonard renamed the song Juke. He also started another record label, a subsidiary of Chess Records called Checker Records. Little Walter got a solo deal on that. Juke was released in 1952, and it went to number one on the Billboard R&B charts within 1 week. It spent 8 weeks at the top of the Billboard R&B chart. It was on the Billboard charts for 20 weeks. That was the only harmonica instrumental that had ever done that. The song Juke is still the only harmonica instrumental ever to be a number one hit on the Billboard R&B chart. Little Walter later left Muddy's band in 1952 and formed his own band called the Jukes. It is alleged that the reason he left Muddy Walter's band was over some money issues. Little Walter was about to get more popular in the winter of 1955 when he released his song called My Babe, written by Willie Dixon. That song was the only Dixon composition ever to become a number one R&B single. The song spent 5 weeks at number one on the R&B charts, becoming the biggest hit of Little Walter's career. Ray Charles' song called I Got a Woman was on the charts. Within days of the appearance of Ray's song on the charts, Little Walter recorded My Babe, and Checker Records released it while I've Got a Woman was still on the charts. It beat out Ray Charles' song by spending 19 weeks on the Billboard R&B charts, including the 5 weeks that it was at number one. Little Walter became more popular. He was a star. Muddy and Walter's success, it helped Chess Records to become one of the most successful record labels at this time, and it got the nickname Cadillac Records. It got that nickname because Leonard Chess was buying all his musicians and himself Cadillacs. Cadillacs cars was a big deal back in the day. If you drove a Cadillac, you had it going on. Cadillacs was the thing. Little Walter had 14 top 10 hits on the Billboard R&B charts between 1952 and 1958. Following the pattern of Juke, most of his singles released in the 1950s featured a vocal performance on one side and a harmonica instrumental on the other. Many of his vocals were written by him or Willie Dixon, or it adapted from earlier blues themes. The sound he had was more modern and up-tempo than the popular Chicago blues of that time. Walter was living it up. It is said that he would drive around with his trunk full of cash. He had women in different places he performed in. He was just living his life, being a star. It is said that women would fight to go home with him. He was the man, allegedly. His audience got very excited over him and his amazing talent. Allegedly, the fans would want to see Walter perform so bad that if the venue was full and they weren't able to get inside, they would shoot up the club. Then the police would come and arrest little Walter because of that, child. It is said that Walter dealt with a lot of racism, traveling, performing out of town. They would get harassed by racist police, but Walter wasn't putting up with it. Word is, he didn't take any crap from anybody. He allegedly got beaten by the police a few times. Muddy and Walter had squashed their differences, and Walter was working with him again. Muddy needed Walter's famous sound on his songs. Walter also played harmonica for the great Howlin' Wolf. Walter had a sound that people wanted to hear. He was just mesmerizing with his sound. From what I understand, Little Walter and Howlin' Wolf got along pretty well, but there was a time they had an incident. It is said that allegedly Howlin' Wolf was dating one of Little Walter's band members, Child's baby mama. And one day they had a disagreement, and Howlin' Wolf pulled out his gun, and Little Walter jumped off stage and pulled out his gun to protect his pal. But the situation got settled. The beef over the woman was allegedly squashed. Things was going good for Walter on the professional level. He often played the harmonica on the records for other people on Chess Records, including people like Bo Diddley, Jimmy Rogers, John Brim, Rocky Fuller, Memphis Minnie, the Coronets, Johnny Shines, and more. He also played on recordings for other labels backing Otis Rush, Johnny Man Young, and Robert Nighthawk. Walter toured Europe twice, in 1964 and 1967. He performed at the American Folk Blues Festival, and there was some film footage that was captured of him, and it was released on DVD in 2004. Walter was successful in the 50s, but at some point, things started to turn for him. He allegedly got in a number of fights, problems in the streets. He had car accidents, just a lot of stuff going on. He had a bad temper, and it is said that he loved to fight. So allegedly, Honeyboy Edwards said there was a girl that Walter was involved with, and her boyfriend was jealous of Walter and tried to fight him, and Walter pulled out a knife and allegedly cut him in the mouth. Wow. It is also said that he loved older women too. He had a problem with alcoholism and a lot of issues with women. The alcohol played a part in the issues he had with women. He was allegedly shot in the leg by one of the women that he was involved with, which caused him to walk with a limp after that. It just got really rough for Walter. He probably had some emotional issues too with all the experiences he had in his life, because sometimes life can change us. It is said that after he started walking with a limp, he became depressed. There is a story that alleges that Walter's sister, her boyfriend, he knew Walter normally carried a gun, and they got into an altercation, and he thought Walter was going to pull out the gun, so he grabbed his hand and the gun went off. And Walter got shot in the knee on that same injured leg. I don't know if that was bad luck or what, but that's crazy. I'm remembering a scene on the Cadillac Records movie where Columbus Short, who was playing Little Walter, got out of his car and went up to some men and asked, "Who's Little Walter?" And the guy said, "I am." Then Columbus shot him. He went back to the car where Muddy was waiting and said, "That man is stealing his name, taking money out of his pocket." I don't know if that happened in real life or if they just added that in for entertainment, but that part of the movie shocked me. Little Walter was no joke at all, boy. No, no joke. There's another story saying that Walter cut his other sister's boyfriend on his neck because he put hands on his sister. People were also jealous of Walter, and you know the typical haters. They saw him as an easy prey. He drank, and I've seen people drunk. People drunk sometimes make vulnerable and easy targets. He allegedly was doing drugs too. There was an alleged incident in Chicago where the streets were blocked and little Walter got his tire iron out of his trunk to get them to move. The men allegedly grabbed the tire iron and beat Walter really bad. It is said that it was really bad. His head was really swollen, and the doctors told him that he shouldn't perform that day because blowing the harmonica could cause more problems. Oh man. It is said that he still performed that day. There's a lot of stories of him being beaten. He was allegedly beaten by cops and his head got split open and he was left in the middle of the street inside his car, covered in that red fluid. They said the doctor told him that he was permanently damaged and could not handle another beating like that again. He allegedly did get more beatings from the police. He got into more fights, which made the injuries he already had a lot worse. This is sad, y'all. This is sad. A few months after returning from his second European tour, Little Walter was involved in a fight while taking a break from a performance at a nightclub on the south side of Chicago. He apparently sustained minor injuries in this particular altercation, but they aggravated the damage he had suffered in previous terrible encounters. He died in his sleep at the apartment of a girlfriend at 209 East 54th Street in Chicago early the next morning. His death certificate said that he died from coronary thrombosis, which is a blood clot in the heart. Allegedly, evidence of external injuries was so insignificant that the police reported that his death was due to unknown or natural causes, and no external injuries were noted on the death certificate. Harmonica blues legend Little Walter was buried at St. Mary Cemetery in Evergreen Park, Illinois, on February 22nd, 1968. Little Walter had a rough life, a successful life, a heartbreaking life. Little Walter's legacy is huge. The greatest harmonica player of all time. He was an inspiration to many. He did what nobody before him did. The music journalist Bill Dahl described him as king of all post-war blues, harpist who took the humble mouth organ in dazzling amplified directions that were unimaginable prior to his ascendancy. He's widely credited by blues historians as the artist primarily responsible for establishing the standard vocabulary for modern blues and blues rock harmonica players. Tony Glover notes Little Walter directly influenced people like Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, Junior Wells, James Cotton, George Harmonica Smith, Carrie Bell, Little Charlie and the Nightcats, Kim Wilson, and more. Little Walter's daughter Marion established the Little Walters Foundation in Chicago to carry on the legacy of her genius legendary father's music. The foundation aims to create programs for the creative arts, including music, animation, and video. Little Walter had a wild life. His life was rough, and it seems like most legends had it that way, it seems to me. Little Walter is in history as one of the greats. He is not forgotten. Rest in peace, Brother Walter. I'll talk to y'all later.